welcome once again to Ewtn's Bookmark. Our guest author is Father Cedric Pisegna, CP, a book, A Retreat with Father Cedric, available through our Ewtn religious catalog, ewtnrc.com for all things Catholic. A face familiar to our audience, of course, from being on this show, one of many shows, and of course your own series that we've been running on Ewtn over many years. Always great to be with you.
Doug, it's such a pleasure to be back. This is our 6th interview.
See, if I had my great friend Lee South still with me here, she would have told me that before.
She's such a sweetheart.
Interview. What a great of late memory.
We miss her.
Absolutely. A retreat with Father Cedric. Now you're a passionate, so giving a retreat is in your blood, right?
Yes, I'm a parish missionary. I travel from parish to parish, and really what I'm doing is I'm giving a retreat to the whole parish. I come in on the weekend, on Saturday and Sunday, and I preach all the masses. And I invite them to come back Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Basically, it's a retreat for the parish. But I also live at a retreat center in Houston, Texas. People come to our retreat centers, Los Angeles, Houston, Sacramento, Detroit. They come to our centers to have a retreat. They spend the whole weekend with us. But also we go out to them to give retreats.
Right, exactly. Now, you right at the beginning, you talk about the idea, at the height of it all, Jesus knew the value of rest. He told his disciples, come away by yourselves to a lonely place and rest a while. For Mark, I've heard it said we must come apart before we actually come apart. Is that your line?
Well,
or you got that from somebody else?
Yeah, I've heard it spoken before, but the basic instinct here, Jesus wanted his disciples to rest, to get stronger and rejuvenated so they could go out and be more effective in the ministry. And really, that's what we try to do on a retreat. You get rejuvenated, you get strengthened to go back. We're not retreating from the world, we're retreating to get strong, to go into the world, to be fruitful, and have an effect.
Well, you say here, Jesus knew that if he and they burned out, they would be no good to anyone, We don't retreat from the world, like you said, we retreat to go back to the world even stronger and more efficient. That's why you don't feel guilty, is what you tell yourself when you're on the 18th hole?
I don't really play golf on a retreat, but
is that a juicy rationalization, or is that a truism?
You caught me. It's confession. Actually, you know, it is mandated in canon law for a priest to go on retreat every year. And the reason is because, just as I'm telling you, we're no good to anybody if we're all worn out. We need to reconnect with God, to be strong, so that we can go out and minister well.
There was a great line, Vince Lombardi, one of his famous quotes was, fatigue makes cowards of us all.
Yeah.
And that's why you say here, I don't want to when you're tired, I don't want to reach out to others. Because often people work so hard trying to produce that they forget that they need to replenish themselves every once in a while. We all need rest, relaxation, and replenishment. We all need a change of venue. Variety is the spice of life. So is that part of it also? It's not only being at home and taking it easy, but getting away in some ways.
There's something about getting away. You change the whole scenery. It's refreshing to the soul. I travel. When I travel, it's educative, but also it's renewing. I invite people to come to our retreat centers, or any retreat center that you can find, because it's a different space. Sometimes you need to get, I remember God told Abraham, get out of your tent and take a look. Get out of that same space. But the genius of this book, Doug, is certainly to go to a retreat center, but I'm going to try to help people to have a retreat right at home.
At home, right, yeah, okay.
To incorporate the principles of a retreat in their very own home by reading this book. But it's a both and, not an either or. Right,
which might encourage them to go to the next time that there's a parish mission, or for those who can't make it out, to be able to get some of the benefits of that. You talk about the idea, when it comes to navigating our life, Jesus teaches us that we need balance. We need to go on to say we need to strike a healthy balance. All too often people move to one extreme or the other. What are those two extremes?
Well, the extreme is not really being spiritual enough, or being over-spiritual, where you can almost get scrupulous about everything.
Have you seen that?
Oh yeah, and the confessional people are scrupulous, and I try to help them. Yeah, God understands your scrupulosity, but the bottom line is and this comes from 1 Peter, be well balanced. And you want to be spiritual, but I don't want to say you don't want to go overboard, because you can always grow and progress. But it's important to be balanced in your spiritual life. It really is.
You say, I thought this was interesting. You talk about rest stops on the way, but you say even race car drivers need pit stops.
Yeah, because it can be overwhelming and very intense in life, especially when you're going through sufferings and you have tribulations. It can be so overwhelming and intense. You need to take a break and take some time out, take a rest, come apart lest you come apart.
Right, exactly. When you go on a retreat, you give God your time and patiently wait. You go on to say, besides offering a break from the ordinary retreat, living needs to be a spirituality, a lifestyle. Go on to say, we don't just rest from our trials in real life, we rest in them. What do you mean, rest in them?
The bottom line is you can't get away from suffering, and you can't get away from trials. So what you have to try to do is to bring God, or your sense of God, perception of God, right into the middle of your real life, into your tribulations, into your sufferings, so that you can meet them head on. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, because you are with me, with your rod and your staff that give me comfort. And I think that's one of the geniuses of a retreat. You get centered on God, you get abiding, you get the flow with God, then you go back to your life, and you're strong and able to face these things and not be overwhelmed.
Right. You mentioned the idea that the pandemic from 20 to 24 was really a monastic moment. How so?
It was a monastic moment because everybody had to stay home. They couldn't go out and go do whatever, they're shopping and going to baseball games and all these different things. What people were doing is, some of the people I know were setting up little places in their home, little chapels, and they were praying. It was quiet. You couldn't get all busy. It was a monastic moment. And monasteries are places where you can kind of get all the distractions out of your life and get centered on God. So the pandemic, in some ways, really was a monastic moment. And it also helped us through media, reaching into people's homes. More people were coming to Ewtn, coming to my program, I know that.
And staying with it.
And staying with it now that the pandemic's over.
Right, who may have never discovered the channel or what was being put out there without that being the case. You say, whether at home or on the road, I've learned to, quote unquote, set up shop wherever I go. What are you setting up?
One of the challenges of being an itinerant is a wanderer. I go from parish to parish as a missionary priest. One of the challenges is I have to live in bedrooms and other people's houses, rectories, that I'm not familiar with. And it's difficult to be able to pray. Sometimes it's difficult to pray in your own room. Imagine when you're traveling and going to all these different places. So I have to, quote, set up shop wherever I am. I have to find a prayer space in my bedroom on the road, whether it be looking out a window. Sometimes I look out a window, there's lots of trees and there's water out there, it's beautiful. Other times I look out a window and there's a brick wall. And I don't have any control over it. So you have to be comfortable, you have to adjust, I call myself Gumby, you have to be flexible to whatever you get. So I set up shop on the road.
Okay. You say, therefore, I can't live on yesterday's manna. I have to have fresh manna from God each day. What do you define as manna?
Well, remember the manna in the desert spoiled when they tried to hoard it, or they got it day by day. And that's the way we have to live our spiritual life. We've had, I know you have, Doug, we've talked about this, we've had good spiritual experiences in the past. Those are wonderful, but you can't live on the past. You have to live each day as it is and be open to the new touches that God has for you. So I put it this way, you don't rest on your laurels, your spiritual laurels. Even with preaching, even with ministering, got to keep writing, got to keep producing, got to keep going forward. And it's the same in the spiritual life.
Retreats are not isolated experiences that you go away and enjoy and then finish. A perennial problem is going home after retreat. Many lose the graces gained when you focus on the new troubles that arise. It's like the story of Jesus and the 3 disciples at the Transfiguration. What about that story?
Remember the Transfiguration. They're up on Mount Tabor. They have this ecstatic experience. The glory comes, and Moses and Elijah. They're all happy and everything. They come down the mountain.
In fact, they wanted to stay there. At least Peter was saying, hey, let's stay up here. This is pretty good.
They come down the mountain like we all have to, and they meet this man with a possessed boy. And that, to me, is symbolic of when people go home from a retreat, they go home to the same old, or maybe even more difficult problems. Maybe they even get a flat tire going home and they think, oh great, what did I go on that retreat for? Look what's happening in my life now. But the retreat is designed to strengthen you to face real life. We're not retreating from real life, we're retreating to get strong to face real life.
Do you ever get the impression that sometimes with those situations that the other side throws these little things in your way to kind of dissuade you from changing your life in the positive way you're trying to do that.
The number one strategy of the evil one is to steal your soul, and the number two strategy is to make you miserable.
Right.
And that's exactly what he tries to do, and you're right on there. He will do everything and anything to distract us, to make us miserable, to say, oh yeah, you think you had a good retreat,
Right.
but I'm going to take that away from you right now.
Right, exactly. You say, I have many goals for this book. First of all, I want you to grow in intimacy with God. Next, I want you to experience the needed change and progression in your spiritual, emotional, and moral journey. I also hope you will experience a refueling or filling from God so you can be victorious in your everyday struggles. And you talk about the idea that you've been doing this for 37 years. Have you ever been burnt out?
No, because I really love making retreats. And really, just to let you know, in the Passion of Spiritual Life, St. Paul of the Cross called our monasteries retreats.
Mm-hmm.
St. Paul of the Cross is the founder of the Passionists. And the idea was that we would go out and minister and come back. Jesus left the bosom of God,
Mm-hmm.
went out and ministered, and came back to the bosom of God, the place of comfort, place of strength.
Okay.
And it's the same way in our spiritual life. We go out and minister, then we come back. We read, we pray, we have community, liturgy of the hours, Mass.
Mm-hmm.
And that really does strengthen me to go out and to be strong, to produce, to write. There's a creativity that comes when you're rested. And I have to tell you that that's what the goal of a retreat is,
Mm-hmm.
to rejuvenate you, to rest. Now, I also talked about many other things besides your intimacy with God. A retreat is a time where you gain new perspectives about your life. A retreat is a time that you work on your inner issues. A retreat is a time, as I said, you get rejuvenated.
Mm-hmm.
It's really important that you make good decisions on a retreat also. So it's a whole plethora of different things. Let me share a story very quickly about a retreat that I went on. When I was studying for the priesthood, I was going through some tribulations and some troubles. And I wasn't sure if God had really called me, so I went on a retreat. And I went to the University of Steubenville. It was the priests and deacons and seminarians retreat. University of Steubenville, very charismatic.
I didn't think that was in the desert, though. You say it's a revelation in the desert.
Well, sometimes you feel like you're going through a desert when you're
So
struggling.
it was a spiritual desert.
Yeah, a spiritual
Okay.
desert. But God reveals in the desert. So I went to the University of Steubenville, and there was a cardinal there that talked to the seminarians, Cardinal Daniels of Belgium,
Mm-hmm.
and he talked about discouragement. And it was just like a boxing glove hit me, and I realized that I was discouraged in my life, and he talked about evil. Evil was doing it. You brought up evil a little while ago. And I came to the perspective in my life that I was going through a spiritual battle, and I wasn't even aware of it, and that retreat gave me a new perspective. I went back to my life strong, even though I was facing tribulations, and I endured, got ordained. Now I've been ordained for 33 years. And wow, I really believe that retreat saved my vocation.
You say you could be stuck in any of the areas of your life, in your spiritual walk, in your personal growth, or in your relationships. Perhaps you're mired in addiction. You say, and you go through several other things. This book is about getting unstuck and moving forward in every area of your life.
People are stuck in addictions, as you said, habitual sins, relationships, stuck about the way they see themselves. It could be fear, could be self-image, could be self-esteem, maybe they're rejecting themselves. A retreat is a time where you really look, you take a look within, and you allow God to bring some healing to you so that you can move forward. And it's not a retreat does everything, but a retreat is a catalyst to get you moving. And that's what this book is about. I want to get you moving. I will talk about different areas that everybody's going through because I talk about real life and real issues. And I will help you, I will give you some perspective because this book will help you to have a retreat right at home.
Right, you talk about a closer walk with thee, trust is a must, change is possible, the price of progress, addictions, power of the Bible, etc. You also said here the idea that you question people in areas of change. First of all, there's your spiritual life. How are you doing in your moral life? But then you talk about your emotional life. What's your emotional life, and how does that
Those are things like
these
fear, discouragement, things like that. We have emotions, and people oftentimes aren't in touch with their emotions, and they're just going through it. Depression is a big one, discouragement. And you have to deal with these emotions. You have to look at them. The first step in getting better and experiencing healing is by looking at your emotions. This book will help you to look at that. Oftentimes a retreat, you have a retreat master who's guiding you with talks. That's what I do on the road as a missionary. And I try to help surface these things so that you can take a look at them and get better. You're never going to get better by not looking at them, by confronting your issues. It's like the snake that was lifted up in the desert, and everybody that looked at it got healed. And it's the same way, if you remember, the doctors have that symbol of that snake that's lifted up, because they bring healing through, not by avoiding your issues, but by looking at them.
Right. In the section, Trust is a Must, Lean on Me, what is trust? It is similar to faith, but differs in this way. While faith is believing in someone, trust is relying on that person.
And I really push the truth of trusting in God. There are two things I believe that God really wants from us. Number one is loving Him and loving others. And then number two, trusting God. Trust is a must, as I put it in that book. And what happens is, on a retreat, you may know the difficult things that you're going through, and as you're going through them, it's very hard for you. But when you go on a retreat, you gain some trust. You get that perspective. I must trust God in the midst of this. God is allowing this to happen so that I can actually lean on Him more, grow closer to Him more as I'm going through.
Right.
We're not in an ivory tower somewhere. We're in real life. We're not in a vacuum. We're in real life. Marriages, suffering, going to the seminary, the various things, our jobs that we go through. And this is where we learn how to trust God. And as we trust God in them, we grow.
You say trust begs unanswered questions.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing of we don't know the future. Nobody knows the future. Everybody that comes to God says, I want to trust you, but I want to know what I'm going through. I want to know exactly what's going to happen to me. Nobody knows the time that they're going to die or how they're going to die. We have to trust God for that. Right. It begs unanswered questions. Sometimes we ask God questions, we don't get answers, and what God is telling us is, trust me.
You say we must understand that Jesus never ever promised that our walk of faith would be a cakewalk. Many think that being a Christian means living a life of ease, free of trials.
Jesus said, in the world you will have tribulations, but cheer up, I have overcome the world. And that's that whole thing about abiding. And as we abide in Jesus, we bear much fruit. Abiding means trusting, staying close to Him, letting that sap flow into us from Him. And that's what we do on retreat, because a retreat is we all pray, we all read, we all spend time with God. But a retreat is a concentrated time where you give a day, a week, the Ignatian retreat is a 30-day extended retreat. And I mean, you are focused on God. And if you think praying a little bit in your life, oh, I need that, think what a retreat will do. Because when you concentrate, that's when you really get the flow.
Especially in a world of distractions like we live in today.
iPhones, telephones, TV sets.
Well, I thought it was interesting you said in an earlier chapter, but this is chapter 4 on Change is Possible. We talk about God believes in U-turns. I thought that was a nice way. You said the good news is God is always welcoming us back, and then you referenced Rembrandt's painting, which we have prominently put on the journey home.
That's that whole thing about personal change. Usually when I go on a retreat, and most retreats and parish missions have this, we offer the opportunity for reconciliation, because a retreat is also a time, you got to do some work when you look within at your moral life. And the bottom line is nobody's perfect. We all need to change. Help you to surface 1 or 2 or 3 main areas. And U-turns are permitted. Really, it's okay that you need to confess your sins and that you have sins. It's not okay that you have sins, but we all do. But it's not okay when you won't look at them and you won't confess them. Reconciliation is a time of healing, and yes, U-turns are permitted, and especially if you're addicted. There's habitual sins, there's addictions. The first step in getting into recovery from an addiction is facing what you have. If you don't confront your issues, you're never going to get better.
You also talk about the idea that even at times going backwards is what happens in your spiritual walk, almost that 2-step forward, 1 step back, as long as you're trying to move forward, right?
Yeah, I liken it to an airplane. Sometimes you get on an airplane, that thing's going to go like 600 miles an hour, 550 miles an hour, and it starts by moving backwards a little bit. And that's the way the spiritual life is too. Sometimes we move forward, we're progressing, and we go backwards a little bit. Then we go forward and progress. And you can't let the fact that sometimes you're not progressing stop you. The bottom line is that you will move forward by grace with God's help.
You also talk about in chapter 5, the price of progress. When it comes to personal change and growth, there's always pain in staying the same and pain in changing.
It hurts to change. A lot of people are afraid of change, but
Right.
the bottom line is that you can change. And yeah, I bring up the whole subject of fear. I suffered panic attacks when I was younger. It was very hard for me to speak in public and to read in public. And the pain of change was facing my fears.
Right.
I'm a long way down the road now with television and preaching before all these big crowds and being on TV and radio, as I said. But the bottom line is I had to face shame, inner pain, panic, hurt. That's just one example. There's so many other examples. Depression.
Right.
To get out of depression, you have to move forward and face some of the things you're afraid to face.
Right. One of the issues today you talk about is anger issues. You say we live in a time of great anger and even rage. Why do you think that is?
Well, part of it is political. I mean, we live in a society right now that is so angry. I tell people when I'm on the missions, I say, if I were to tell you my political persuasions, half of you would clap, the other half would walk out. There's road rage, there's anger with marriages, there's anger at self. There's a lot of anger going on. A lot of the anger stems from imperfections. And let me talk about that for a second. I don't just address issues like anger and depression and loneliness. I try to get to the roots of these issues. And I think that's what we have to do on a retreat. And that's why sometimes a retreat can be painful, because you might get to the roots, and the roots are painful at times. It could be your family has broken up and you didn't feel loved or whatever it is. Well, as you face that, God will enter that pain and bring healing. Don't be afraid to face it. I have a saying, face it, embrace it, and God will grace it.
That's very nice. I like that. Overeating. This is my chapter. I would venture to say that most people today have some form of oral addiction. Seems like every time I pull behind a car at a stoplight, the window's open with an arm with a lit cigarette hangs out the window. A friend of yours is always having a cigar while he's doing that. Is that just, compensating, people trying to calm themselves down?
I think so. There's the comfort food
Right.
and that kind of a thing. We just turn to it. It becomes a habit, a habitual type thing. And to overcome it, you really do need to look at your issues, your inner issues. A lot of times it's emotional pain, could be fear, worry. When I've got a big talk coming up, I find myself going to comfort food just to eat. It's like, Cedric, stop it.
Those aren't on Father Cedric's recommended diet here.
Oh, I've got the diet. You want a good diet book? You got to get this
I got
book.
it right here. Yeah, I thought it was great till I realized you have my diet under listed avoid.
Avoid sugar, avoid all those things that aren't good for you.
Next one should be avoid good times and happiness, but apparently that's not
Well,
the case.
we have to live with balance. We were talking about balance earlier. Yeah, you can have some of it, but not all of it. Self-discipline, self-control, really important in life.
Chapter 7, the power of the Bible. You say there's no substitute for the Word of God revealed in the Bible. However, do you think people don't appreciate the Scriptures these days?
I think there's a movement toward them now. A lot of people are getting into Bible studies. The church has we had that synod on the Bible some time back. Bishop Barron and others and myself
That's
talking
true.
about the
Right,
Bible
right,
a lot. That priest, there was another priest, the Bible in 1 year.
Yeah,
I
Father
forget-
Mike Schmitz.
Mike Schmitz, yeah. And I really think that people want to know what's in there, and a retreat offers you time to really spend time with the Scriptures. I wish I had the time to tell you how renewed I've been from the Bible. When I prepare for a homily, my talk benefits me more than I think anybody else, because the Scriptures are so powerful. It renews our strength like that of an eagle. Wonderful.
You talk about, from a personal thing, about your dad, and he died the way he lived, surrendering. What was that about?
Yeah, my dad was a surrendered person. He suffered with an eye injury. It happened to him in the military, in the Navy. He learned how to surrender. And he was a surrendered person. He wasn't very controlling and that kind of a thing. And he died as he lived. He died in surrender. He didn't struggle. I remember the doctor told me there was no death struggle when he died. And he died in his sleep. And it's the same way for us. We have to learn how to surrender to God, and we will die as we live. Jesus on the cross surrendered, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And he died beautifully with that prayer, that beautiful prayer of surrender.
Now, did you want to be a transporter operator on Star Trek or what?
Well, everybody wants to be translated and transported, but we have to be transformed.
That's right. And
it just takes time.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
I knew where you were going on that.
You also made an allusion to trick-or-treating in a retreat. What was your connection to that at the beginning of the book?
I tell people, treat yourself to a retreat. A retreat gives you some time to get quiet, take a rest, spend some time rejuvenating. And a trick-or-treat, you get candy, you get sweets, you like it, it's good things. A retreat is not something to be afraid of. A retreat is something very beneficial, something very beautiful for your soul. And do something important for your soul. Go on a retreat. Get this book and incorporate a retreat right into your very own home, even if you can't get away.
Well, another book in the works?
Oh yeah, I'm going to talk about the meaning of suffering. I also want to talk about growing in the Lord always. I've got 25 books written, so we'll get to some of them in the future.
Yeah, I have a feeling we will too. Always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Father Cedric Pisegna, CP. A Retreat with Father Cedric is the title of the book, available naturally through our Ewtn religious catalog. EWTNRC.com for all things Catholic, and especially this book. And look for us next time, right here on Bookmark. Thanks for joining us.